CFB Paint back at it. Week 5 weekend review, Week 6 preview. Let's chat through picks, chat through the win totals draft. Lots to get to. I think we got a lead with the biggest game. I heard this described on Cover 3 as 3 games within 1, which I thought was a pretty apt description of it. And I will admit, I only saw like the last 7 minutes or so. So I saw Georgia's going to that Bama's going to give this game away. Georgia takes the lead. Bama responds, and then the pick in the end zone to seal the deal for Alabama. But wow, what a surprising result! Maybe not surprising that they won, but how we got there, I think, was pretty surprising. I remember the first time I looked at it. Now, for those who are not aware, I was out of town this past week, so of course Corey recorded alone. But this past Saturday, I actually attended the first half of the SMU Florida State game. We have a 2-year-old daughter, and she lasted about as long as the Florida State players did. So after that, we were just like, you know what? It's way past her bedtime. We're going to call it a night. We're going to go home. But at some point during that game, I think when my wife is starting to do like distraction control with our little daughter, taking her around so she could go pick up the confetti that the SMU cannons kept firing off. But during that point, I checked my phone and saw the score was 28-0 Bama. 28-0.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, 28-0, and I was stunned. I was like, wait, what? And man, can we just talk about Kalen DeBoer and his? The man is a coach. He is an X's and O's guy. He will beat you with your guys, beat you with his guys. I think you just give him a team and let him draw it up, and he just finds ways to win and to maximize his teams, maximize everything that his team is, right? And get the most out of his players. Wow.
Yeah, you watch that game, he clearly decides to attack the outsides. Like, there's very few runs that go up the middle at the beginning. It's like getting to the outside edges. And Milroe played a great game with great passes. Like, I think he completed, I haven't looked at the stats, but I think it's like 80% of his passes or something like that. It was like up there, and he looked very, very impressive. Just an incredible coaching job by Kalen DeBoer. I think I heard a stat somewhere that he is 6-0 against Sarkisian, against
Lanning.
Yeah, Lanning, and then now you include Kirby, which is kind of a crazy stat. I don't know if that's 100% true. I know he beat Texas.
It's at least 5-0 because he beat Texas in both bowl games the last 2 years, and he beat Dan Lanning. Yeah, because he beat Lanning twice last year and the year before. So that would be 6-0. That's nuts.
Yeah, and honestly, if you go through your top 4 coaches, like who are the best coaches? I mean, you've got probably Sark and sorry, not Lanning, but Kirby are probably the top
Smart,
2 right now. I put Lanning in that category right now. Maybe not the best coach on a game day basis, but he's doing a great job of recruiting and finding ways for his team to win. And I mean, if you go back like 4 years or 5 years, I think he only has like 7 losses total ever.
Yeah, that's the thing is like I think that we said this back in the days when DeBoer was at Washington. Like, man, he can coach, and I think everyone. Like, that's pretty plain. Not really like earth shattering analysis there. To me, the knock was always like, can he recruit players? Because that Washington recruiting class before he left Washington for Bama wasn't what you'd think it would be for being undefeated in the playoff, and I think 22-2 over the last 2 years or something like that. So I don't know if that's the exact record. It's somewhere in that ballpark, right? They just won boatloads of games and were well ahead of schedule in terms of how quickly he was able to turn around Washington. But I don't know. I think I'm imagining, this is not me with any insider knowledge, but I'm imagining when he took the job at Bama, they're like, no, we have certain requirements with regard to your staff and who's on that staff, and we need some guys that can get it done on the recruiting trail, because they are by a mile right now.
Well, and they also might have just said, listen, we know you can coach. We'll handle the recruiting. We've got the money.
Maybe that's it too. Yeah, we've got the – sorry.
No, you're good. I mean, if you look at the freshmen that are starting on that team, it's insane. Like you have Ryan Williams, who's 17. You know what? I'm so sick of that comment. I went and looked up when he turns 18, so I don't have to hear it anymore. Sadly, it's not till February 9th of next year.
All right, you got 1 year of it.
Yeah. But anyways, like you have him, you have like Red Morgan on defense, you have the cornerbacks on the defense. Like they're got some amazing freshmen, and so he's got a great class coming in. So I guess he does have the recruiting chops when you have the name back recognition and the fact that you have a track record that goes all the way back to FCS, like or NIA. I don't even know how far back I can't remember how far back he goes. But you have a proven record from coaching, and now you have the money to back you up. I think it's a combo that's going to.
Yeah, I think the question's been answered, right? The concern there was that, would he be able to recruit at this level? And I honestly thought, like, okay, over the summer you saw lots of the recruiting wins. So I was like, okay, that's probably solved. The one question that I had, and we probably won't get it, we probably won't get an answer to it because I don't think the question's valid anymore, was like, if they lose 2 or 3 times on the season, I think you'd see, and I think we said this in an early podcast, I hope, but I need to go back and check the tape. But I think I said there's an opportunity for people to say, like, hey, Bama's not Bama anymore if he struggles some, right? Say, like, hey, look, he had a great run at Washington. This is the SEC, right? But I don't think you're going to have that problem if you're DeBoer. You're not going to have to fight against that narrative because you just beat who has been the top dog in the SEC for some time. In the Georgia Bulldogs. So
he's done a good job of coaching to his personnel. A lot of coaches sometimes struggle to do that. Like, oh, you need to fit my system. He's like, I'm going to adjust my system to my players. And then he's also coaching Milroe in a way that's, helpful. Instead of taking so long in the pocket, Milroe's like, all right, it's not there. Let's get out and go. Like, all right, it's not there. Hit my check down right away. Instead of like, all right, we're going to go through this, read, and set back a little bit longer. And he's not being forced to sit in the pocket. It's like, move quickly. You are the most athletic person on the field. Let's use that to our advantage. So,
yeah, it's pretty impressive, and I think that combination ends up being, it ends up being a pretty special one that we'll watch the rest of this year. And I mean, he finds his guy, and he always is able to get the most out of him. I remember Michael Penix went to Washington. I was like, okay, so he had like a couple of bright spots at Indiana,
yeah,
whatever.
But they were like 5-4 or something like that,
yeah, exactly. And then he becomes an absolute killer at Washington, and part of it I think was just like, okay, he's finally healthy. But like DeBoer, like Jake Haener when he was at Fresno State. You can keep going. Like, just he finds someone, and like you said, it's not been the same people. Like Penix, you wouldn't really confuse him with a running quarterback. I mean, he's mobile enough, right, to like avoid pressures. But Jalen Milroe is a different beast, and DeBoer doesn't skip a beat. Really impressive. Fun to see the back end of the back half of that game. I do want to go back and watch the beginning to just kind of see how the lead was built and how some of it was squandered, may not be the right word, but like how Georgia got back in the game.
Great passing by Beck. Honestly, Beck kind of hit a second gear in that second half, and it was just boom, 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 boom. And he was kind of underthrowing some of his balls a little bit, which is kind of interesting. But his receivers were able to play back to it. And it wasn't until Alabama caught on a little bit on that final drive or so, where the cornerback gets his head back and the ball's underthrown again, and the cornerback's, well, guess what? I'm behind the receiver, so I can pick it off in the end zone. And but his receivers did a good job adjusting to those balls. So.
Yeah, I didn't see much of that. Again, I saw right toward the end of Georgia essentially taking the lead, but that was about it. So yeah, I'll have to go back and rewatch the rest of it. But man, it seemed like an awesome game.
Yeah,
and probably the most noteworthy game thus far in this season.
Oh, for sure.
I think like Texas, Michigan, maybe.
I look at K4 rankings, and they I don't know if you've ever seen that on Twitter, but they do a post of most deserving of your record. So it's basically like, how good would the average 25 team do against your schedule, and like based off what your record is, how do you rank? So like Alabama being undefeated against their schedule is the number one most deserving team of being like where they are. The surprising one is BYU is number 2 because they're one of the few teams that has I think they're one of the 3 or 4 teams that have 3 Power 5 or 3 Power 4 conference wins or 3 Power 4 wins on their schedule. Most teams don't have that quite yet. So
yeah, and
they'll drop once the schedule evens out.
Yeah. I was gonna say I don't know how much they'll keep, but the SMU win looks better and better every single week.
Yep.
So
Yeah, it's true.
tip to the Cougars. Let's see. Sorry, I don't even have the results from last week. What other ones do we want to tackle? I guess maybe we tackle the ones that we know we have listeners on first. I'll do a little piece on Rutgers and Washington.
Okay.
Just bummer for the Huskies going across the country, missing a couple kicks, losing a game where they had opportunities and just couldn't quite get it done. I think the silver lining, if you're a Huskies fan, which again I'm count me in that group, is that I don't think they're as bad as I thought they were going to be, given what they lost. Jed Fish is a good coach. He's going to organize a team. Again, he maybe is a touch conservative for my taste, and I think some of those decisions could have been different in this Rutgers game, but that's a physical Rutgers team that beat a decent Virginia Tech team. You saw Virginia Tech put probably its best effort of the year on Friday night, on that same night against Miami, and on the road. So that's not. It sounds kind of weird just given Rutgers' history over the last 30 years, but there's not a whole lot of shame in losing to Rutgers right now. So love, for the Scarlet Knights. This is going to be a big year. I think we talked about them as potentially a draftable team in our win totals draft, that they might make us regret not picking them. It appears that they're on that trajectory right now.
Yeah, you mentioned that you think we've gotten better. I was looking through that stuff. I'm like, I'm not sure we have. I think we might have gotten worse. There's some teams that we should have had on there that we did not have on there. But
I mean, it's early, right?
Early. You're right.
It's early. I'm just saying that over the 2 years that we've done it, we have gotten better. I think every single one of us got better. And therefore, as a whole, you didn't?
Oh, this year I'm not better.
Well, this year it's, but we're not all the way through this year, so I'm not going to judge it just yet. Although I do feel maybe we should pull the Windows draft in just a second here, but I just feel like there's some that we've been kind of dealt kind of a tough hand. But let me jump back. All right, so I touched on Rutgers and Washington again. Some missed opportunities in that game. Let's talk about the other Friday night game, Virginia Tech, Miami. Fascinating game.
They played? I don't even remember that. Just kidding. We were texting back and forth with this game.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It was just fun because it was late enough that we were already in our hotel room at that point, just kind of decompressing after spending some time in Dallas. And we just turned that game on. I can't remember exactly what we turned it halfway through the second quarter, something like that. I think it was 14 apiece or something to that extent when we first tuned in. Virginia Tech really you couldn't have scripted a better game for them. If you were to tell me, if I'm a Virginia Tech fan, hey, guess what? Cam Ward's going to turn the ball over 3 times. You're going to run the football at what? I can't even. Let me get the box score in front of me. But you're going to run the football effectively. Let's see what the actual yards per carry was. They were at 6.4 yards per rush on the game. You're going to run the ball pretty well. You're going to run for 206 yards against them. Man, you're thinking, of course we're winning this game. And yet, couldn't come up with quite enough stops.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
For the 3 turnovers that Cam Ward did have, you still had the 4 touchdown passes and the 343 yards. We saw that a little bit, the loose Cam kind of come out, but they were able to overcome it and be successful. That last Hail Mary no catch. What are your thoughts?
It's hard to. I really wish when they released their findings that said hey, this Miami player was standing out of bounds and touching the ball and therefore it's incomplete. Show me that shot. Show me that screenshot that showed here. This is the image that we saw. Here's his foot touching the ground. Circle it and then circle him touching the ball. because I don't see that. Um, I mean, I certainly see it, but like it, one could argue that it happened after the catch, which I don't believe was a catch. I don't think it was a catch, but I mean, we again have to kind of define like what constitutes possession of the ball. Like if I have it pinned against my body with my arm, is that possession? Because sometimes I think that's real possession, sometimes it's not, right? Like I don't have it like tucked, but I have the ball with like with 1 point up and 1 point down, in between my arm. He has that.
Yeah.
His backside hits the ground, and if he has possession and survives the fall, which I think he does, that is a catch, I think. And the second he has possession and survives the fall, it's a touchdown, right? Like the play's over.
Yeah, so I'll tell you from my perspective, I thought he caught it, and I was like, "Oh my word, that's a catch." And then if watching it in replay, you kind of see that. I feel like you see like he has it, he hits the ground, and he doesn't quite survive the fall. The ball starts to bobble a little bit, and the Miami players are able to like separate him from the ball. And so that's why I'm like, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for Miami in the fact that like what I think should happen, I think it should have been ruled a non-catch. Ended up being the case, even though they ruled it a touchdown on the field. But if I'm watching it myself, I don't know if I could have overturned that play. But
yeah, exactly. And that's it. And that's the thing where it's just like that's where I was trying to say like, okay, show me the screenshot that you said was conclusive, because I don't see it, right? I don't think he catches the ball, but the thing is, if he catches it, the second he has possession of it and survives the ground, it's a touchdown, right? The play is over. Like so, all the raking of his arm afterwards by the defensive back shouldn't count for anything.
Yeah, and so what I think is, I think he does catch it, and then as he comes down, he loses control of it, and then it's finally completely stripped.
See, and I don't know which shot you're specifically talking about, because there's one where it's like, okay, I think maybe that's the case, but some of it's also covered.
Yes.
So it's hard. It's just tough that the game has to end like that.
They need to put a little microphone or little cameras on everybody's face mask so you can see everybody's.
I mean, I don't know if the answer is more cameras, but like, I don't know. It's just a tough deal for Virginia Tech, who has been this close to 5-0 and also is still 2-3. So my heart goes out to the Hokies. Really, if there's anything, everyone is pointing at the clock management at the end of the game, and rightly so, right? Like I'm not disagreeing with that. I completely agree. My big issue is the turnover on downs after the is it after the interception where they fake the field goal? I think that's when they do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Because they get the ball on the 17, and I remember the broadcast team was talking through this, and they're saying, "Hey, you got to kick the field goal. You got to come away with some points there." And at the end of the game, they end up being sort of like validated in that, where it's like, okay, if you'd have kicked that field goal, you could go for a field goal would have won the game, right? You didn't have to go for it, and your kicker had a heck of a game, just booming.
You and I kind of
did miss the one, but
on our text.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Like you were like, "Hey, you don't go for it unless it's gonna increase your how many possessions."
Yeah, if it turns a 1-score lead into a 2-score lead.
Yeah, and I was like, I think you do go for it, or you do kick the field goal on this one, because it provides you not have to kick the field goal or not have to go for a touchdown the next time, and you're already up a possession or up a touchdown. You're already up 10 points. This will put it to 13. And so if I hit the field goal, I'm still up another possession. And like, I don't know, like, I think your theory on that holds valid for most times, but in these shortened games, I'm watching, like, if you're up in the shortened games of the last few years, touchdowns are critical. But then if you're up up by a possession or two, and you can push it, and you know your team's not quite making it all the way down the end zone, you're not being as cohesive as you need to, and you can push it to get that much closer to another possession, that's why I think it makes sense. If you're going from 7 to 10 here, I don't think you get the field goal at all. There's no worthwhile. But from 10 to 13, I think that's when it ended up being worthwhile. And yeah, honestly, probably would have changed the game.
Interesting. Because yeah, I would say 7 to 10, it is worthwhile, because now I'm up 2 scores. So like,
yeah, it's true.
The freak play where you go there, but I just like, Yeah, my thought process is not even just on the go, don't go, because I actually agree that they probably should have gone for it. But I don't think they utilized third and four very well. Like I would have ran that football. At that point in the game, I was averaging more than that 6 yards a carry I was averaging throughout the game. I think there's a couple sacks at the end that actually take that number down. So I was being, in large part, extremely successful on the ground, and maybe that third down makes my decision easier, right? If let's say the worst happens, right? Like Miami gets really good penetration in the backfield, loss of 2 or 3 yards. Okay, then it's a pretty clear kick.
Well, yeah, you
Um,
have an incompletion on first down, you have a run for 7 yards on second down, and then if you take your strategy and you run for it on third and fourth down, you have two chances to get 3 yards
yeah, exactly. That's
instead
my thought process.
of a pass that's incomplete and then this little hokum run or fake field goal to give you a chance to get it.
Which is the most baffling thing. Like that, like everyone talks about, like fake field goal was bad. I think the like design of the fake field goal is really weird. Like you're gonna have someone run across the backside of your line,
Yeah, they're going to
where
be coming in.
most often you're gonna get penetration on the edges usually for any field goal, and maybe right up the center. And so it's like he has to, number one, avoid it coming from where he's coming from on
Yeah,
the edge, and then
get around it.
potentially avoid any interior pressure, which he does, and that's the problem. I love how, like, in the broadcast team, I felt gave them way too much credit, like Miami, where it's like, oh, he wasn't fooled. I was like, I think he was just trying to get penetration on the field goal, and
Yeah,
it ended up being like, oh, here's the person with the ball right here. I'm gonna tackle him.
100%
But
agree.
then you even have the edge too. Like I'm a little surprised. Like the design to me was like, I don't know how you test it. I don't know how they go about testing it, but like just like I think about it, just like the mechanics of who's going where. It just doesn't seem like it would ever work.
Yeah, the only time I've ever seen I think fake field goals work is either you have a person like one of those edge people, they leak out for a pass, right? Or you have the
Mm-hmm.
kicker, you do the Les Miles thing and throw it over your head, or you do have that tight end pull, but you run it up the middle
Right. Yeah. It's you're either attacking the center or the edges, not this kind of like, hey, I'm gonna go all the way around the edge
yeah,
from off tackle to the right, to the outside edge
I
on
don't
the
give
left
up.
side. Like just yeah, okay, I'm right there with you.
Yeah,
We probably spent enough time on this for talking about a team that's 2-3, but I think if you're Virginia Tech, you're probably a little frustrated, given how great of an effort you got, and you still come away empty-handed. Other games that I wanted to take a minute to cover. Oh, I mean, these are not in order of like when the games took place, but like Utah, Arizona, number one, go Wildcats. Like, I'm glad to see them win that game. Two, I'm done with the hijinks with Cam Rising. Like, nope. As far as I'm concerned, he will never play another down.
I
Like,
told you 2 weeks ago. I'm like I'm betting against Utah because I don't think he's gonna actually play.
and you were absolutely right. I've been fooled now twice, so shame on me. And so I'm just never going to believe it anymore. Um, yeah, part of me questions, like, he looks fine. Like I don't know what that cut was on his hand, right? Like I haven't seen any pictures of it, so
It ha-
that part's hard.
it
Go ahead.
gives feelings of last year where he was fine, he was fine, he was fine, but never played.
Never played. Yeah, exactly. And we talked about it preseason last year, where there were some videos that they put out where it's like, man, he's bouncing around on that knee like like you wouldn't know he had a knee injury,
Mhm.
right? And it was just stunning to me that they're pulling this. I wonder. Part of me wonders if they thought, hey, we can beat Arizona without him.
And I felt like that's how they're a little bit that they did last week. Who did they play?
Against Oklahoma State. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt like that might have been the case this week. Honestly, Isaac Wilson doesn't play good enough to win this game. I mean, and you have him throw the ball 40 times in this game. He completes half of them.
Yeah. That's the part that's surprising to me. I think the biggest thing for me that was shocking was like Arizona's defense to this point. I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. It's been a little bit disappointing. Like they haven't really been. I don't know if I expected them to be a total lockdown group, but I expected them. They have a lot of returning players, particularly in the secondary and at that second level at linebackers. So I think that the defensive line is a bit of a work in progress, which to me says, hey, they should be able to run the ball just fine. Utah 2.9 yards per rush. That's
Yeah.
not good. And that's part of the problem, right? That to me is like, okay, I've got alarm bells going off. Like, I don't necessarily blame Isaac Wilson for the loss, but when you're asking him, like you said, to throw the ball 40 times because you can't run the football, and again, Arizona, I don't think is a terrifically stout against the run, and so
Yeah.
this might spin this forward, and I have some concerns about
Well,
Utah.
and that includes right the 10 times Isaac Wilson ran the ball. Like those are probably not runs,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. Fair.
But
Mm-hmm.
Mike Bernard's averaging 5.7 yards a carry. Why aren't you feeding him more? I mean, he only has 16 carries in the game. If I'm getting 5 a pop, I keep feeding him probably 24, 25 times so that Isaac Wilson doesn't have to throw it 40 times and have potentially 45, 47 dropbacks.
I mean, I get that. I think some of that was that they were just kind of down by at some point in the game, right? Like I don't have like right in front of me exactly
Yeah, but
what like the
they weren't out of the
play
game
calls
until
were,
like
but
I mean, it was 10-3 and 10-6 or 16-3 going into the fourth quarter. Like they weren't out of it until like you start getting into the fourth quarter, maybe like 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. It's like, oh, we're down 2 touchdowns. We need to start throwing the ball because you're only down. Yeah, you're down 16-10 at the beginning of the fourth quarter, like right at the beginning of the fourth quarter. So you weren't out of it. You weren't trying to like have to catch up
yeah,
majorly,
fair. Mm-hmm.
but and they only run. I mean, looking at the plays, 11 plays after they are down 16 or after they're tied 16-10. It's just the defense couldn't stop Arizona on critical plays. I mean, I don't think honestly watching the game, I didn't think Arizona was overly impressive. They just did enough to win.
Yeah, I did miss the end of this game. I think I went to sleep at like a few minutes left in the third quarter. Um, I was just kind of like, I'm trusting the Wildcats at this point. Although I drafted Utah in our draft and felt pretty good about it. I forgot about the Cam Rising effect. Um, but yeah, that was one I wanted to just spend some time on. I think a lot of people wrote off Arizona really quickly, and including myself, right? Like, so kudos to them. They did a pretty good job of going on the road and what is in recent history been an extremely tough place to win and won. And they didn't win pretty, it was kind of an ugly game kind of all the way around, but they did what they had to do. And yeah, you won a game where oh my gosh, how much did T-Mac didn't really
Yeah, 50 yards or something like that.
50 yards, yeah. 6 catches, 50 yards along with 13. Like, they took away your number one option. You had other options. The Burnett, the new tight end. Like, all right. Like, I can't even remember the name of the tight end they had last year. He was a really, really good player. But Keon, I don't know how to say his first name,
Yeah,
had himself a game. You had someone step up. And I feel like the vibes in Arizona probably changed dramatically on that one after in the first few weeks, like they've won. They have not looked especially good doing it, right? New Mexico put up 39 points against this team, 61-39, so like a win, but they
New
would win
Mexico's defense
22 to
played kind
10
of
versus.
crazy in that first half, though, against them.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, they have not, like, through 3 weeks of the season they had won against New Mexico, a 12-point win over Northern Arizona, and
Yeah,
then a 31-7 defeat at the hands of the Kansas State Wildcats. Like,
yeah, they haven't
I
looked.
don't think people were feeling particularly excited about the rest of the season for Arizona. A win at Utah can really change your outlook.
Agree.
Anyway, so what other games do you want to cover from this past week?
Let's see. Ole Miss, Kentucky. A little bit of a slog
Yes,
fest. Um,
I haven't seen any of it, but tell me about it.
yeah, a little bit of a slog fest. Let me pull up my little notes on this one that I had real quick. Kentucky wins 20-17. Essentially, the fumble into the end zone, or like right, parallel, and then gets picked up by a tight end into the end zone, wins them the game, and Ole Miss misses the field goal at the end. particularly looking at the what am I looking at? I want to see Trey Harris. Okay, that's what I was looking for. I watched the game. I didn't know the stats off of it. I'm just watching the game. Trey Harris is running all over Kentucky and like wide open, best receiver on the team. He has 11 catches for 176 yards, one touchdown, 48. Like I don't know. It's basically felt like Kentucky was like, hey, we're going to put as much pressure on Dart as we can to help him see if he can figure out the hole in our offense and our defense. And if he can find the hole in our defense, we're screwed. But if he can't get there quick enough and we get to him, we got him dead to rights. And that's really what it felt like. Jackson felt like he was running for his life quite a bit. But when he hit the big play, Harris was open every single time. And it's just a matter of could you get the ball in his hands a little bit more often. He does have that critical fumble on a screen in the third quarter. Critical, maybe not critical, but it happened. The fumble on the screen in the third quarter with him fighting for an extra yard, which is kind of like the kind of detriment to him. But it's just an interesting, kind of scheme from Kentucky. On the other hand, Kentucky on the offense, they bring in their other quarterback, Gavin Wimsatt, and he kind of just like they use him as an option kind of guy, and just he's going to run the ball when he comes in. So where is it coming from? And he's able to move the ball enough times and be successful enough that they can win the game. It's just like a little wrinkle that got thrown in, but his fumble on the 4-yard line almost cost them the game, and they get lucky the fact that one of the guys picks it up. It was just it was an ugly slugfest. I mean, there are no interceptions, but I think there's a few fumbles in the game, and just like it didn't look like anybody outright won this, but I mean, for the second week in a row, Kentucky's, or not maybe not second week in a row, but for the second time this year, Kentucky's defense is kind of given an offense that we think pretty highly of a conundrum where they can't seem to score as much as they want to. And kudos to them to finding a way to get out to win. Also, I don't know if you didn't watch it, or the call on 4th and 7 from like their own 35-yard line or something like that, or from like it's like their own 30 for that Kentucky decides to go for it. I kind of loved Mark Stoops' explanation. It's like, listen, if they get the ball back on their own 35, well, we've done a pretty good job holding them out of the end zone. Maybe they kick the field goal and we get the ball back only down 7. And I was like, all right, that's not a terrible explanation. I think because at the time, 17-10. But they hit a 46-yard bomb. He's like, I expected them to kind of put pressure, and we just went for it. And they hit a 46-yard bomb down the side, and that sets up the game-winning touchdown. Pretty cool call and pretty gutsy call, in my opinion. And I love it. He calls out, and he's like, your analytics probably say don't go for it on that one, but screw it. We went for it.
I'll have to watch it. Yeah, I hadn't seen it for a second there. I thought you were talking about some sort of like fake punt or something.
Yeah, no, it's 4th and 7, and they decided to go for it.
They just put the offense out on the field.
4 minutes left.
It.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Oh, man. That is cool. Stoops he has a special place in my heart since his days at Florida State as defensive coordinator. So it's always fun to see him do well. And yeah, I never count a Stoops team out just because they're going to fight like hell. And they're also going to probably drag you down into the muck, right? They're going to make the game, like you said, something where every yard is hard to come by, where the points are at a premium, and they're going to give themselves a chance at the end. And in this case, they pulled it off.
Yeah. I have a few other games I want to touch on.
Yeah, fire. Go rapid fire.
Notre Dame beats Louisville. The at the end of the game, the announcer or the interview lady goes, "Oh, you've had a win against A&M and against Louisville. What allows this group to show up when they're against the best teams?" And I'm like, A&M and Louisville, I would never classify those as the best teams. I mean, they both 3-1, but it was just weird phrasing to me. I'm like, Notre Dame hasn't really played anybody of significance, and they've lost to Northern Illinois. I think A&M probably would argue that they are significant. They've only lost one game, but just as a funny comment to me. The Michigan Minnesota game, super frustrating. Is it Michigan Minnesota? Yeah, super frustrating in that they're up 21-0, and you and I both picked Michigan to cover, and then they only ended up winning 27-24 or something like that. It's interesting. I heard a comment made from one of the other analysts saying it doesn't seem like Michigan's adjusting in the second half, their defense, and so people are figuring them out and being successful. You saw that with USC. You saw that with Minnesota. We'll see if that trend continues. Illinois Penn State. Watching Luke Altmaier go against Drew Aller was kind of fun to me. I kind of have a special place in my heart for Luke Altmaier because he almost came to Florida State. Um, or did he come and transfer? I don't even remember.
No, he ended up flipping to Ole Miss and then got beat out for the job there, and
Right.
now is at Illinois. Yeah.
But I enjoy watching them. Both kickers were absolutely terrible in this game. I think there were 3 or 4 missed field goals in this game. But Tyler Warren is the show. You need to watch Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end. They line him up. He watching the game, he reminded me of Taysom Hill. Just the way he runs, the physicality he runs, and the fact that they line him up at halfback, they line him up at tight end. They score 2 touchdowns off of him as a lined up at quarterback, running the option with him. I can't wait to see him throw. He's a fun one to watch, and that's my early Mackey Award, winner if I'm picking somebody. If you haven't had a chance to go watch him or watch that game and just watch number 4. I think it's 44. Just watch where he lines up the whole game. It's kind of fun to watch. Just how incredibly physical he is and how good he is. There's at one point in time, the very first touchdown he does is he pulls it and runs it in for a touchdown, and then they run the option again. He sucks this linebacker in super well, and then whoop, lets it go. And the guy
he's lining up at QB.
Yeah, he plays QB in 2 of their touchdowns.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And then the first one, he dives in from like 3 yards out and nails one in the back of his own players and falls into the end zone. But if you watch, I don't have the stats, but he probably lines up a quarterback 5 or 6 times in that game, just in random different plays. It was fun to watch.
Have they shown that before? And I'm putting you on the spot there. I have watched maybe 10 plays of Penn State football.
So I watched the West Virginia game. I don't recall seeing any of that in there. Who else? They played Kent State. I didn't really watch much of the Kent State game.
Yeah,
but I imagine they haven't put a ton of that on tape.
Maybe this was the time we're putting it on film, so some of the other major opponents have to prepare for it.
Yeah, it was fun to watch.
Nice.
The only other game I'd touch on would be, let's see. Oh, I'll touch on the Colorado game and the Boise State game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Colorado goes down to the bounce house, whatever it is. Sorry. The bounce house, and ends up winning with Hunter hitting the Heisman pose after one of his picks. Later that night, Gianti, the running back from Boise State.
Ashton, yeah.
Runs for 246 yards. Also hits the Heisman pose. You go update your latest award, futures. They're number 2 and 3, I think, favored for the Heisman, with Milroe being number 1. And it does look like those 3 have kind of jumped to the front a little bit. I hear talks of if Gianti can keep this pace, can he break, Barry Sanders' record of 2,600 yards? I mean, he's already got 835 yards through 3.5, 4 games or something like that. So, and they're not going to be playing overly tough opponents. So that'll be interesting if Boise State can make it there. He's got a chance. If Colorado can keep winning, I could see. Hunter's clearly the best player in college football, in my opinion. If Colorado keeps winning, does he stay in the race? But both players fun to watch, and both fun to see early Heisman poses come out and say, "Hey, I want to stake in this." Although Milroe deserved to do the Heisman pose more than anybody else this week. He put up 300, 400 yards almost by himself, and he didn't do it though. So.
Yeah, you talked about some pretty incredible performances. I thought back when the Boise State lost to Oregon, I was like, number one, Ashton Jeanty, clearly one of the best players on the field.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and you think about the supporting cast that he has around him, compared with what Oregon has on defense, right? From a pro prospects perspective, from a recruiting rank, all those things are playing not in his favor, and he still was able to really play well there. And I'm kind of, when they lost that game, I was like, oh, I wonder if that cost him his chance. And that would be stupid if they, if it ends up costing. I'm glad to see that so far it hasn't. But I figure with a win there, they could have really done it, and
for sure.
that he'd be all over everyone's on everyone's radar. But that would just be unfortunate if a kick return touchdown, a punt return touchdown, end up costing him the Heisman, because he doesn't play on special teams.
Yeah,
to cover kicks and stuff. So big fan here. Would love to see it. I definitely think he, at least to this point, deserves to go to New York.
Agreed.
and I'd love to see him win it. I'd love to see and we did see a little bit of a precedent break this last year where Jaden Daniels wasn't,
Yeah.
it wasn't Michael Penix, it wasn't Bo Nix, it wasn't Quinn Ewers, it wasn't Jalen Milroe, JJ McCarthy, or Blake Corum. It wasn't any of those like the best player on one of the top
Or
4 or
even a
5
Carson
teams.
Beck, even, or
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So they broke kind of what has been sort of in recent years kind of the historical precedent of like, okay, the best player on the team that's contending for a title is going to get the award.
Yeah. And I think
And
they will
so they gave
continue
it
to
to
break
Jaden
that
Daniels.
precedent. I think
I
they're
kind of
leaning that
hope
way.
so. I feel like those need to be kind of separated out, especially now when you've got like at least some leveling off of the talent at the upper end of college football. I think that there's kind of a greater disparity between like the bottom of FBS and the top of it, but within the top, I don't know, 20 or so, you're starting to see that that's becoming a little bit more evened out.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have just one or two behemoths in Bama and Georgia. I mean, they are still, but I'm just saying like, they may not be quite as far and away better than the rest of that pack, right? That pack of
Agreed.
20 or so teams.
I think 2 3 weeks ago we mentioned you should put some money on Hunter and GT. How do you say his last name?
I think GT is
GT.
what I've
Okay,
heard.
that's
I
fine.
don't know.
I just watched him. You should put some money on them. I think they were like 3,000 to 1 and 20, or they're plus 3,000 and plus 2,500. They're down to like plus 700 plus 1,000. So if you,
Opportunities.
yeah,
Yep. Well, that'd be fun. Are you ready for? Oh yeah, go.
I want to talk about the Florida State game a little bit.
Oh, I don't.
I
No,
don't
just
want to
kidding.
talk about
I've got
necessarily
some
the
thoughts.
game. I want to talk about the results a little bit. Brock Glenn gets into the game, and I've been trying to figure out why hasn't Brock been in the game previously. Like you're clearly not playing anymore. What is Norvell not telling us? Because he's been kind of defensive about why he wouldn't put Brock in, and I've come to this thought process. I think he thinks the supporting staff around DJ is so bad, and if you watch it, anytime DJ does have a good pass, it's dropped. And then half the time he's running for his life. I think he's decided that that group is so bad all around that he doesn't want to. Like he had to throw Brock in last year into bad circumstances. He doesn't want to have to do it again this year. And it turns out, guess what? He's going to have to do it again this year because DJ gets hurt. But also, I think this is a little bit to him succumbing to pressure of saying like, all right, DJ's clearly not doing it. I guess I'll do this. But this is where I think coaches far too often make mistakes when players are not ready and they get put in. It kind of damages them. It doesn't make them able to grow. You watch like a Jordan Love in the pros, or you watch even Sam Darnold this year with the Vikings. These are quarterbacks that have had time behind other people. I know Sam Darnold got thrown out with the Jets and struggled with the Jets. But if you give them the time to learn the system, to learn to be a good quarterback, then they can be successful and grow. Not everybody's ready to jump in and be a starter right away. And that's what I feel like he thinks is Brock needs this time a little bit behind to reach the top tier. And so he's been a little bit unwilling to be like, hey, I'm just going to throw him out to be to the Wolves. Turns out this year he's going to have to do that, or this week he's going to have to do that because DJ's hurt with a broken hand or something, or does he have a broken hand? I don't even know. I don't know. I'm not even sure I'd buy it, to be honest. I think it might be an excuse to get Brock in. But it was just an interesting thought to me. The other
Yeah.
thought, I'll let you go, and then I got one more thought on that.
Well, I mean, so I hear you. I mean, it's a comedy of errors, right? People are going to point at DJ. Why? Because
Oh,
the interceptions happen, right? Like those happen. Some of them are just ill-advised throws. But you're right. There have been, I can't count the number of times where it's like that ball's right on the money and it's dropped, including in that game. Like early in that game, there's a deep pass to Jalen Brown, right in his hands, 40 yards downfield, doesn't catch it.
Kyle
Like,
Morlock across the middle. Yeah.
but there's loads of opportunities, right? So we can talk about that. It is a full-fledged team effort to be as bad as they are. Like that's just it's on everyone,
And I
right?
think
There's
that's
there's
partially why he doesn't want to expose his younger players to that.
and I hear that. I guess my thought process is twofold here. Like now you're in a situation where you have to throw him to what is probably the best defense in the league in Clemson.
In the ACC, yes.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, the league being the
Yeah.
conference. Thank you. With no preparation, like I mean, I guess he gets this week of practice, right? But he doesn't get any real like. I mean, obviously, what 2 or 3 possessions at the end of that SMU game, including 2 or 3 or 2 or 3 total. I think one of which you're kind of raising the flag, you're handing the ball off, you're saying, let's get out
He
of here.
throws
We
4
know what this
passes
is.
for incompletions.
Yeah, to me, he's kind of a rhythm guy, though. Like,
Yeah.
if you've seen, like, the Louisville game, he was terrible. Like, open and shut, right? He never got into a rhythm. In the Georgia game, it sounds stupid, but look at those first couple of drives, and it's like, oh, okay, like there's something there. So I would much rather have seen him play. I mean, even if it's just at the end of some of these games where it's become kind of a laugher, right? Like, I mean, I guess the Boston College game, you could probably say, you could argue that that game was still in reach the entire time. And maybe the Memphis one too, I guess. Like, but I like, what's the harm in putting him out there? Like, I just think, yeah, maybe you run into some confidence issues, or it ends up kind of setting things back. But to me, some guys are ready for it, and I don't know. I'd be interested to see. I don't think it materially changes how good or bad FSU is
Yeah.
this year. I mean, even if it's just like, hey, he's not going to be productive, but he's not going to throw the ball to the other team. I was like, okay, that might be a net positive.
Yeah.
Like,
And I don't even know if that's going to be the truth or not. So,
yeah, yeah. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying, like, if you go out there and do nothing, like just hand the ball off and you know, and then you punt on 4th down, like in some cases that's been better than what you've got this year. And I'm not saying again, not all of that falls on DJ, right? Like I said,
well,
um,
and you
I
have
don't
been
know.
DJ has been under pressure, and you have he's more mobile than DJ. So maybe he gets out and he runs the ball, 7-8 yards. Like, that could be a net positive.
Yeah. Can I just talk about it from an environment perspective for just a
Yeah, go
second?
ahead. What are you talking
Like,
about?
okay, so yeah, so I went to this game,
Sure.
right? Like, number one, kind of a cool environment. You definitely get the vibe that SMU is not a huge fan base, but it is a very wealthy fan base. It's like, we described it like, for the women, the dress was like, hey, I want to be like sexy cowgirl chic, but I also want you to know I spent about $400 putting together this outfit. Um, and it's like, which is fine. Like, it being anything with SMU on it was optional, right? You just had to look like a cowgirl more than you had to look like you're an SMU fan. Um, I was a little like, shame on SMU fans for leaving at halftime. Now I will lead with this. Of course, I left that game at halftime. We have a 2-year-old whose bedtime is at 7. We're dealing with a time change in terms of coming from Mountain Time to Central Time, and we made it to halftime before we decided, you know what, she's had enough. Uh,
And your team
SMU,
will.
well, yeah, it looked terrible. It was 14-9, right? Like, that game isn't technically over. Now,
Right.
we all could say we think we know where this is going. Um, but, like, the number of SMU fans that left at halftime of a game that's one possession and Florida State gets the ball at half was insane. Like,
Mm.
what are y'all doing? Like,
Mm.
so that was a little surprising to me.
Better things to do in Dallas
Um,
than be at a college football game.
I guess, but it looked like tons of them were like just going, like, I guess the party starts at half. Like, they go to the game, that's like the formality, and then the after parties. Like, we walked where we parked. We had to like walk right through like kind of like their Greek life area, like where the sororities and frats were. There was already some things starting to buzz around there. We're like, oh, okay. So that's just kind of the pregame, and this is
Parties.
the actual festivities for the evening. Um,
One more comment
but
on that too.
sure.
I was reading Twitter, and a guy named Rohan Law. I'm going to give him the credit on this. But since college football playoff committee set precedent last year that if your quarterback gets injured, you will get evaluated as a new team, Florida State's first 4 games shouldn't matter. And if they go undefeated, they should make the playoffs. Right? You are a
Oh
different
boy.
team. And if they are a different team with Brock and they all of a sudden start winning, that's the precedent you set last year. That's what you complained about. You aren't the same team.
Okay, I don't see it happening, but it would be kind of hilarious and very painful if FSU was to somehow magically turn things
Oh,
around.
no way.
You beat Clemson, you beat well, no, but hear me out here. But they do go on this Cinderella run where they're what 8-4, and there's no way they make the ACC championship game at eight and
No, they're
four.
not
They
going to make
lose
these.
3 losses in conference. So then you
What?
go, okay, you're 8-4, but
You
with
have
this
wins over
new guy,
Clemson
you've
and
beaten
Miami, and
Clemson, Miami, and Notre Dame.
yeah.
Like you'd almost have to entertain it, especially after you screwed us over last year. Like
Oh, and like
it's funny.
I
It's
could see the
funny to
fan
think
base being
about.
like,
Like
listen, that's the precedent you said. You said we aren't the same team
yeah,
without that quarterback.
and they'll get left out again, and then they'll really burn it down and do some unhinged stuff. But that would be hilarious and again painful, like I said. But of course it won't happen. But that's a funny little tidbit that you just threw out there.
Yeah, I thought it was absolutely hilarious and wise thinking from a lawyer, of course. So
Oh yeah, we ran into Eric Dickerson at the game. That was kind of cool.
that is
like,
way cool.
Yeah, didn't really chat, but just like, oh, that's Eric Dickerson right there taking pictures with people.
Did you ask him, hey, were you making more money in college than these players are? Or
Probably not, but I wonder if like the time value of money.
oh, I'm sure
like
he was. I'm sure.
In what, like 1980 something dollars, $100 got you a lot further than it did today. Like
You could buy more than one day's worth of groceries.
bingo.
One more thing about the Big 12. Can I talk about the Big 12? How crazy it is?
Go ahead.
And just how kind of unexpected Big 12 has been. The fact that you picked, if you were to sit there and say two games into the conference schedule, BYU and Colorado were on top, I would have laughed you out of the room. Like, there's no way that those two teams are the best teams in that conference. I still don't think they're the best teams in that conference, but the record right now has them as being better teams, and it's just it's a fun conference to watch. Now, after watching this and seeing how Utah's played without
Isaac Wilson,
and with Isaac Wilson, is Iowa State the favorite to win the Big 12? And is Iowa now is Iowa State the new Iowa? Because haven't scored. They've scored less than 22 points in all 3 of their games, and they've held teams to 7.5 points per game. Like, this is a very Iowa-esque from Iowa State, although they did beat Iowa already.
Yeah, they did drop 52 on Arkansas State. So don't besmirch that great effort against the Red Wolves.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm gonna besmirch that. I've seen the Red Wolves play. They're not that good.
You're right. Let's see. Looking at the back, they still have a lot on there.
I think the last games they play Utah. No.
And Kansas State back to back.
Yeah. Okay.
At Utah, home versus Kansas State.
Okay,
but they also play at West Virginia. Not an easy place to play. They host UCF.
The problem is
still is out on UCF.
Every single one of these games, anyone can win.
Yeah.
And
that's wild.
Unless you're playing Kansas right now, and then you're okay.
Ooh.
Let's be real. A spade is a spade. That game is struggling. But yeah, if you told me who to bet on, I wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah, I don't know. It's that one's going to be a fun race to follow going down the stretch here.
I'm actually going to pull up the. Do I have?
Do you have like totals or futures?
Let's see if I can find conference champions figures real quick.
Yeah, go ahead. While you pull that up, I'll touch on a couple of other things.
Yeah, keep going.
Kind of, to your point, conference races. It's really interesting to see kind of where we're at now with these, just the expanded conferences. I think it just gets really convoluted now, especially since you're going to need more and more tiebreakers now, since you have fewer head-to-heads and no divisions where it's like, okay, I just look at the head-to-heads within that division for the most part, and I usually am going to come up with who's winning. But I think some of these conference races are already, some of them are convoluted like that. I think some others are already starting to be pretty consolidated. Like, having seen what I've seen from both Ole Miss and Missouri, I don't believe either are really SEC title contenders. And Missouri hasn't even technically lost a game yet. I would also, right now, Texas A&M is in sole possession of first place in the SEC. I don't expect that to last. I really think you're at Texas, Bama, Tennessee, Georgia.
So if you look at the
Let me
odds,
see. Am I missing anyone?
no, you're not. If you look at the odds for
Okay.
SEC championship game winner, +5 under plus 550. So Texas is plus 200, Alabama's plus 220, Tennessee's plus 450, and Georgia's plus 550. Then the next team is Texas A&M, and they're plus 2,000.
Okay. All right. So good. I'm seeing the field right. Like I'm not looking at the odds. I'm just looking at like records
Yeah.
and kind of going off of my off the top of my head. The ACC. Let's do. Can I do this
Do it
again? It's
again.
kind of fun. All right. With the ACC, I think you are down to okay. Right now, you have in the conference. Clemson's 2-0, Duke is 1-0, Miami's 1-0, Boston College is 1-0, SMU is 1-0, Louisville's 1-0, and Virginia's 1-0. Everyone else is either 1-1. Pittsburgh still hasn't played an ACC game, and Florida State played 4. That's so wild to me. Anyway, Florida State's definitely out 1-3, of course.
They are at plus 50,000 odds to win the ACC.
I think you could probably triple that, and I still wouldn't even go anywhere near it.
Yeah.
Let's see. So I think this one's down to Clemson, Miami, and I'll say Louisville and SMU have not been like sort of statistically eliminated.
Miami, Clemson, Louisville, and SMU. Miami's at plus 130. Clemson's plus 210. Louisville's plus 550. SMU's plus 1,200. Which, if you look at the other stats and other conferences, I agree with you. They're not statistically eliminated. Boston College is plus 2,200, and then after that you've got.
Okay, so BC is still hanging by a thread there. All right.
Look, where are you going to go next? What conference?
Let's do the Big Ten.
Okay.
All right. So again, just to quickly recap for those that aren't looking at this current standings, I'm just going to read the top ones, right? So Indiana is currently 2-0 in the league. Michigan's 2-0 in the league. Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Rutgers, Iowa are all the undefeated teams in conference. Michigan and Indiana are the only two with 2 wins. The rest have 1. I would say maybe I'll try and do it in terms of order. I would say that Ohio State's still the favorite. Oregon is probably a close second. I'm going to put Penn State in the 3 spot. Give me Iowa in the 4 spot. Michigan in the 5 spot. USC, I think, should also be included. Sorry, I didn't include them because they were 1-1, but I'm going to throw USC in there as well, and I'm going to cap it there.
Okay. Ohio State plus 100, Oregon plus 240, Penn State plus 500, USC plus 1,400.
Oh, USC is a little higher than I have.
Michigan plus 2,500, and then Iowa.
Michigan's higher than I have them
plus 4,000.
Iowa's plus 4,000.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, seems a little steep, but
looking at the Mountain West,
little value we could get there. Yeah.
Rattle
the rest of them off. I mean, the Mountain West is. Boise's probably number 1. UNLV 2. Let me look to make sure I'm missing. I'm probably down to those 2.
Yeah, and Fresno's plus 650 after them. Boise's minus 135, so they're heavily favored to be the winner. UNLV at plus 200 and Fresno's plus 650. Everything else.
How about UNLV going out and whooping Fresno State the week they lose their QB who I mean, again, I don't know what happened, right? Like, if he was promised something and he didn't get it, I don't blame the kid for walking. I'm just saying, with the upheaval that caused, they're just like, all right, let's lock in and let's murder this team.
Well, if you
good
watch
for them.
that guy play, I mean, what's it, Malik?
Sluka?
Haj Malik. What?
Something.
Malik.
I'll get it. Give me a second.
Malik Williams.
Yeah.
Throws for 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, runs for 100 yards. I think he throws for 250, 300 yards, something like that. He does it all, but he doesn't turn over the ball. And that's what I'm interested to see is, can he continue this? Because I think he's a transfer from, Campbell University or something like that.
Campbell. Yeah, the Camels.
Yeah, so it's there's a reason you lost this job originally, and you were expected to be the starter. Can you be consistent? You played a hell of a game, but can you make that play that way again? And that's what I'm interested to see. I almost made their team one of my picks, but I'm a little nervous. I want to wait and see how he plays again.
Yeah, they got a chance to prove it. They play Syracuse this week, and they are 6.5-point favorites at home
Yeah.
versus the Orange. I don't know, just fascinating.
Yep.
I don't think Syracuse is bad too. Like I think UNLV is just a good football team,
Yeah.
and props for all them locking in. I think it could have been an easy week to kind of let those distractions overtake you, and everyone pull together on that one. Again, I hope justice is served for whatever happened to whoever, you know. But
I think the final rumor I heard is that he asked for more than he was actually promised. But whatever. I agree.
yeah, I mean it is a little bit of like a he said
Yeah.
sort of a deal.
So I'm just gonna read you the Big 12, unless you want to guess.
No, fire it off. This one will be messy.
Okay, Kansas State plus 400, Iowa State plus 425. Do you remember kind of how we set the line about 1500 plus 1500 is like teams that are out?
Yeah.
Okay, Utah plus 450, Arizona plus 650, UCF plus 1200, Colorado plus 1300, TCU plus 1400, BYU plus 1500, West Virginia plus 1600, Texas Tech plus 1500. Then you have a jump to Oklahoma State plus 3000. So everybody's in it. This is what you have essentially. Like if you bet and you get it right, you're making money for sure.
That's right. No, that's interesting. But yeah, even Vegas is kind of like it's pretty scattered here in this one. So it is interesting, yeah, that K State's still the favorite. Maybe they righted the ship. They'd had a good bounce back week.
Yeah, you only have
this week
one
against
loss,
Oklahoma State.
right?
Yeah, just one loss in conference. It was just more like it looked like for a minute that maybe the stage was going to be a little bit too bright for Avery Johnson after his first road game, and I guess not first road game, but his second road game, first one in like a real environment, went pretty much as bad as it could. Um, now they get, I guess they're off this week, and then they're at Colorado, so it'll be another raucous environment.
Yep.
And a team that is currently, playing their best football. And who do they play this week? They have a bye week as well, so they're off a bye week too. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that'll be a fun one. Do we want to do like win totals, draft updates, and all that? We're an hour in already, so
that and do it next week or so.
Okay, cool. Let's quickly talk about the week that is. I think we can probably do this quickly. I think game day going to Miami at Cal says all you need to know about this current weekend. That there aren't many marquee matchups. That doesn't mean there won't be fun football being played. So I'll still be tuning in. Let's talk about that game for a second. Heading into the season, again, I was pretty confident that Miami, like I said before, had sort of idiot-proofed their roster. And I believe that is true. But if you were going to tell me what game would make me nervous, there were a few. I think I circled like, hey, look, knowing Miami and particularly Miami with Cristobal at the helm in the last couple of years, they've lost to teams that they are better than, right? Like they are like physically more talented than several times. And so I was like, USF might be able to get them. Of course, that was true for a quarter and a half, and that was it. But Cal, off of a bye, at home, Miami has to travel all the way across the country, and now you're going to get the most raucous Cal environment that you've ever seen. Like game days there, I think it's the first time game day's been there, to my knowledge. I mean, maybe it's been there before. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. But this is all the ingredients of it. The problem for Cal is that you just got like Miami got the kind of the near death experience, but still escaped with a win. So is that something that they're able to kind of tighten up based on that? Because I think that might have been just what the doctor ordered for the Hurricanes heading into what screams trap game, right? Like which screams like former Hurricane teams of the last 15 years would always lose this game, to now like, all right, maybe they got what they needed heading into this game so that they'll be buttoned up.
Yeah, like the thought process of how this game is exactly why I wouldn't touch it with one of my picks. I do think Miami has a chance to blow this team out, but I could see this also playing really, really tight and then pulling a little maybe a Missouri and having to struggle again because you are dealing with that travel and that time change and the ruckus environment, and it's all setting up for an opportunity for Cam Ward to kind of say, "Hey, I am a Heisman Trophy candidate," but it also comes up for saying, is Miami the Miami of old, or have they overcome their demons a little bit? Not that California's overly a great team. They're an okay team. Like Florida State beat them, so they can't be that great.
Yeah, bingo. Like that's the thing is like I think when breaking down this game, and you said you weren't making one of your picks. I'm gonna preview. I am making one of my picks that Cal's not going to cover. I think the spread is like insanely low.
I think it's 10.
Yeah, 10.5 is what I was looking at, and even then I'm like, no, Miami's gonna win this game by 28 points. I think, right?
They should.
Yeah, on paper they should. It's all those other like sort of soft factors that say like, oh, maybe this game gets a little squirrely.
Yep.
But I just keep coming back to okay, they get Ruben Bain back this week, and Cal couldn't block Florida State, so they're definitely not going to be able to block Miami. So that's where I land on that one. So like unless Cal, and I think Cal's defense can do some things, right? Like Justin Wilcox, I think is a good defensive play caller. They usually punch above their weight when it comes to like keeping teams like below their point totals. So there is maybe a recipe for that. I'm just saying it has like almost all the ingredients of what you'd say like, oh, this constitutes like a game that you would expect that Miami might struggle in. But I think coming off of that, like barely escape Virginia Tech, literally by a overturned call on the last play. I think that was maybe the wake up call that the Hurricanes need to say, all right, we got to lock in. We can't have that kind of effort again, otherwise we can get beat. So we'll see, but I am interested in that one. I wanted to look at a couple of other games, and I've lost my tab where I had open the next week, so give me just a second to get it up. Any other thoughts on that game or others that you're interested in this coming week?
Like you said, it's not a great week. I'm interested in the Missouri Texas A&M game.
Yes,
because like, who is Missouri? Who is A&M? I mean, you have these 4-0, 4-1 teams that I'm like, one's ranked number 9 and one's ranked 25, and I don't even know if they deserve to be in the top 25 either one.
Yeah, I don't know if I believe in either of them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's like, all right, we'll see what happens there. I do have a pick on that game. I'll save that for a little bit later, just because for one reason in particular. But it did. We'll see. Like you said, Pitt playing their very first game, ACC game against North Carolina, who has now lost 2. I would say heartbreakers because you got smashed by JMU and then you got beat by you.
You had ample time in that North Carolina or in that game to kind of get over it. Yeah, it wasn't like you got your heart ripped out of you right at the end, but
yeah. But like I'm saying, like heartbreaker because you got destroyed and you're brokenhearted.
Yeah.
But also then heartbreaker that you lost to Duke at the end. The games I'm excited. Honestly, I'm excited to watch Navy, Air Force, and Army Tulsa because we in our win totals drafts we have typically picked these military schools and we didn't pick them this year. Yet both of them have looked well and looked pretty good. I want to see that one. I want to see Tulane against UAB because Tulane kicked the crap out of USF this last week. Has played Oklahoma pretty tight. Who else did they play? They played somebody else that was pretty good, pretty tight. So it's like, oh, I want to see how good this Tulane team is. And then you always got the Jordan Auburn game that goes back. They'll always tell you like this is the longest rivalry of ever or something like that. It's like one of the longest rivalries from college football. But also just
Georgia. I thought you said Jordan. Sorry,
Georgia. Yeah. Sorry, it's
keep going.
Probably in my head.
The Deep South's oldest rivalry, I think, is what it's called, right?
Just to see what happens here, because Hugh Freeze always pulls something on good teams. Can he pull something on this team? I mean, maybe not with Peyton Thorne and the other quarterback because they've struggled, but
he did with Peyton Thorne last year. That's the thing that's most surprising to me. That's the thing that's most surprising to me this year. And we don't have to talk. We don't have. I don't think many Auburn fans that pay us much attention, but like this season, I think for Auburn thus far could only be categorized as a disaster, right? Like you have better receiving options. I mean, the talent wasn't great last year. I think it's better this year, and we're getting worse results. And it's just, especially against teams that like Oklahoma, like is a fine team, I guess, but like you could reasonably expect to win that game. Cal, you absolutely should expect to win that game.
Arkansas.
Yeah, Arkansas. Like, I mean, these are not. They haven't faced the meat of their schedule yet.
Right.
Like, I think when you picked them in the win totals draft, you probably thought like, hey,
Oh, I thought they
I'm
had
getting
two wins at least from those first five, or like
yeah.
I think you were in my head. You're probably 4-1 right now, at worst 3-2.
Yeah, and what I was saying is like as soon as you picked him, I was like, oh, I think that's genius because like you're probably getting 6 wins at the low end, and you know if Hugh Freeze does what Hugh Freeze is capable of doing, like what he did in his Ole Miss run, like you might get 9, like you might get 10, like,
I think
and
you're only favored
it
in one
just
more
has
game.
not.
Like you play Georgia, you play Missouri, you play Kentucky, you play Vandy. I don't know if you're favored against Vandy. You play UL Monroe, and then you play A&M and Alabama. Like you might only be favored in one more game.
Yikes. The other thing that I would say with Auburn is just like, and he keeps throwing his players under the bus.
He does.
And it like are you gonna start losing them? Like I don't know. I wonder if this is just like, man, this wasn't meant to be.
Oh, I didn't like the hire at first in the first place. I know a lot of Auburn fans were super excited about it. I'm like, you already had a character issue in the first place. It doesn't mean people can't change, but I'd be a little nervous about that. So the other game I'm excited about is UCF Florida, with UCF being favored in Ben Hill Griffin Stadium.
Yes. Look ahead game for UCF this past week when they got blown out by Colorado at home.
Perhaps. I mean,
I say that mostly jokingly. Colorado's kind of everyone's Super Bowl just because the attention that game usually gets. So I don't actually believe that, but I know that they're motivated for this one.
Like the fact that they're favored 3 points or 3.5 or something like that surprises me. But also, I couldn't give you a different line that I would go with. I'm like, who would I pick? I think anywhere from Florida being the 3 to I don't know what to think about these teams, because what Florida team are you going to get? Florida was off last week, right?
I believe so.
And so then you have them kind of, maybe they get it together, they figure things out, and this is one of the games that they could have. And if they don't get this one, is Billy Napier for sure seeing the door? We'll see.
Yeah, I like the conspiracy theorist in me like put on my tinfoil hat for a second. Says the SEC like did everything they could, like put this one on SEC Network, make it a night environment. Let's give Florida every chance we can to show that like maybe a top 2/3 Big 12 team is not as good as like kind of a cellar dweller of the SEC.
That's funny.
We'll see. Like we'll see if it works. I'm fascinated to see this one too. I think you got to have this one if you're Florida. If you don't have this one, like which ones can you count on other than on the road at Florida State? Like,
and even then, who knows? It's a rivalry.
Oh no, they're winning that game. I'm telling you right now, Florida is going into Tallahassee on a November 30th and beating the Noles. It's happening.
All right, we'll see.
Gosh, I hope I'm wrong. I am very confident in that. All right. Let's see. Other games. Right. Oh, I mean, I guess we ought to touch on Clemson, Florida State. Clemson favored by 14.5. They'll cover.
Are you making that an official pick?
Yeah, well, yeah, I can make it official. Like we'll run through it later, but just like I don't know if I really have too much to say about this game. Florida State, will they break 6 points? Is probably a more fun question.
So that my analysis.
What is the team total?
Huh?
What is their team total? Now I'm super curious, but if you got something, go for it.
My thought process and my analysis in this. Okay, so Clemson is going to be one of my picks. I'm taking Clemson 14.5 over Florida State. Clemson in the last 3 games has scored a minimum of 40 points. Most of the time, it's in the 50s to 60s. Florida State has not scored above 21 points or above 22 points since game 1. They haven't scored more than 16 points in the last 3 games.
Yikes!
And let's just say, and Florida State has played worse offenses and worse defenses, in my opinion.
Yes, agreed.
So we're looking at like a Florida State team that may get 7, may get 6, we might have a Georgia again. it may get 3. Let's be real. But
Well, there's a good short. Thank you for that.
listen, how does Clemson not cover this 14.5? Why is this line so low?
I really don't see it. Even if you give Florida State some home field advantage, which again, the stadium's under construction, so it's not at full capacity, and that crowd is going to be ready to boo you. Like, they are going to be ready to express their frustration.
Expect a professor to be reading on the top.
Yeah, I've seen all the jokes. It's back to that.
And no paper bags.
Yeah. I don't know if I had any other games that I specifically wanted to call out. Oh, does Ole Miss get off the mat, or does South Carolina give them the business?
I'll tell you in a little bit.
Oh, all right, okay, all right. Yeah, sorry, no spoilers here. We've jumped the gun on a few of them. Let's go ahead and talk through picks. All right, I have last week's here. Let me just quickly recap. First of all, I'm going to give myself credit because I did make picks and you didn't call them out. I was a little disappointed. I'm not going to lie.
I said if you wanted to make the picks, you could be on the podcast and record it yourself.
I heard you. All right. So here are mine from this last week. Army minus 13 versus Temple. Yes, that's a winner. Miami minus 17 versus Virginia Tech. Of course not. Michigan minus 10 versus Minnesota. We already expressed our frustration at how that one played out. Nebraska minus 10 versus Purdue. That one was another winner. TCU plus 2 at Kansas. Wrong team was favored. I knew that. North Carolina plus 3 versus Duke. North Carolina loses in heartbreaking fashion. I win in kind of sweated out fashion after looking like it was going to be awesome. 20-0 at halftime. Looked like it was going to be a nice, easy cruise there. Wasn't that way, but still came out on the right end of that one. Utah, Arizona over 51.5. We already kind of talked about how I'm done with this whole Cam Rising thing. That's a big part of that. Like, expected them to be able to put up some points, and they did not. Isaac Wilson just wasn't ready. Oregon minus 24 at UCLA. I think, did you cover this before we started recording?
I was watching that game at halftime, and Oregon's driving in. I think it's to go up 35-3, and they throw an interception, and it gets scored the other way, and so it's 28-13 at halftime. And I was just like, oh, that's going to blow Steven right there. And it kind of killed Oregon.
Yep. So that one was rough. Boise State minus 7 versus Washington State played out exactly like I thought it would. So on the week, I was 5-4, and I am 17-17 on the year. Do you want to talk through yours, or I don't know if you have them.
Sure, I can go quick. Miami VT.
Yeah, sure.
Miami doesn't cover, as we talked about. Texas to cover Mississippi State. They did not. They kind of cruised, and Mississippi State kind of just packed it in. Said, hey, we're going to take as much clock as we can. Whatever. Michigan minus 10 versus Minnesota. Steve already covered that. So I start off the week 0-3, and I'm like, oh, great. But then I get Oklahoma picks off, Peyton Thorne and wins the game. So I go 1-3, and then Colorado upsets UCF in a spectacular fashion. I believe the comment I said last week was, oh, they'll cover the 15. I don't know if they'll win. They won. They put a thumping on UCF. And then I also had the Boise State, Washington. I came in a higher line than you did, but it still got covered. So, yeah.
Yeah, we saw the field similar this week.
Yeah.
Like, most of our picks were on the same sides of, in some cases, the same game. 1, 2, 3.
I have a feeling we might be there
4?
a little bit this week as well, because I feel like there's only some good games to bet on this week.
Yeah, there's lots of them where it's just like, I don't know. I don't feel like really confident one way or the other, so I stayed away from a lot. Do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first.
Oh, what was your record on the year so far?
I am 12-8 on the year.
Yeah, crushing it. So, yes,
positive.
Winners go first.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Give me TCU minus 16.5 versus Houston. Houston has yet to score on a Big 12 opponent this year, and has only scored 26 points the entire year. So I think TCU covers that. You score 21 points, you're going to cover that. Give me Missouri in a bounce-back game against A&M, that +2. Missouri's kind of had some issues playing defense the last 2 weeks. They have a bye week, I think, to figure that out. And I think they do figure that out. I think they beat A&M at A&M. But I'll take the +2 as well. So Iowa, Ohio State. Give me over 45. I know Iowa's known to play defense, but I think we can get a score around here like 35-14. I think Iowa scores a little bit in this game, and that puts us at the 49-50 points. So I'm taking the over on that.
What was the total? Sorry, what was
Over
the number?
45.
45.
Yep.
Okay.
You asked if Ole Miss bounced back. Yes, they do. They are angry. They need to still make sure they make it into the playoffs with only one loss potentially. They're favored 9.5 at South Carolina, but I think Jackson Dart comes out angry, and we see they win. I think they win big, probably 21 points even. Navy versus Air Force. Like I said, these academy teams are good. Give me Navy -10. Give me Army -11.5 over Tulsa. I think if either one of those fail, it's the Army -11.5. But I think those teams are kind of fun and incredible to watch. Last but not least, I've already kind of given you my analysis of Clemson -14.5 over Florida State. And give me. I'm going to give you a one that you probably shouldn't bet on, but I'm going to. Give me NC State over Wake Forest -5. They got that freshman. The offense has not been able to score, but the defense I think can hold Wake enough that they can win by a touchdown or two. So
I like that I like the NC State play there too. I think that's a good one. I mean it wasn't one that I even saw. Let's go through mine real quick. Clemson -14.5 over Florida State. It's an auto play now. Just auto play, fade the Knowles. I saw someone say, hey, if you want to take Florida State team total unders, that's a pretty good move too, which I don't hate it. Like, I don't know what the team total is in this one, so it might be too low that you can't touch it. What is it? Can you find that? And you're on mute, just so you're aware.
Yeah, let me find it real quick. The total's 48.
Well, I'm saying what's Florida State's team total? Like what are their total points? Can you find that? Because you can usually bet on it. Okay, no worries. But yeah, Clemson -14.5, auto play, fade the Knowles. Next one, Boise State -26.5 at home versus Utah State. Utah State, I don't think is particularly good, and Boise State is running their Ashton Jean T. Heisman campaign at full throttle.
Found it, 11.5. Oh no. No, I think it's 11.5.
Oh, way too high. Yeah, I'm going to say FSU team total under. I'm just going to go ahead and make that one a pick here, too. A few others that I need to go through. Oh, Michigan goes on the road at Washington this week. And Michigan's kind of been sort of a mystery team. I'm surprised. Did you know that they're road dogs?
Yeah, I did see that.
Washington.
Partially why I wouldn't bet on that one. I'm like, I don't know what to think about this Michigan team. I don't like they threw for 86 yards this week, but you shouldn't be throwing the ball. But you're also going to be seeing 10, 11-man boxes, and so I don't know where to.
And I don't think it matters this week. I know I just said some positive stuff earlier about the Huskies, and I think they're further along than I expected them to be. I still think Michigan covers the 2.5 point spread. I think they probably win the game outright, but I do expect it to be a low total. It's a 41.5 is the point total. I expect it to go under. That's not an official play for me, but that's like I could see this being a 17-13 type of game.
Yeah, I think what they're predicting is like a 21-18-ish, kind of off the top of my head.
Yeah, which to me seems a little even that seems a little much. But I have Michigan covering the spread there. This one feels like a sucker's bet, just kind of like you said with the last one. So maybe I'm just falling into all the traps. USC are only 8.5 point favorites on the road at Minnesota. I need to look at the weather in that game.
They struggled against Wisconsin.
But, I mean, I have Wisconsin is better than Minnesota.
Yeah.
And I just I feel like they're gonna bounce back from that. Some challenges last week. I'm not reading too far into that. I think USC covers that 8.5, and I'm probably walking right into a trap. Right, like Vegas is probably like, oh, perfect. Couple of others that I am gonna say. I thought about a few others, but I'm gonna lay off. Arizona State -3 at home versus Kansas. Yeah, give me that. I think we've talked about Kansas. It's just not. It isn't working this year. I'm gonna lay off. I thought about taking Duke with the points versus Georgia Tech. That's not a play. I just wanted to throw that one out there. Considering that one, they just have to keep it close, right? And they've played pretty good defense to this point, including against pretty good rushing attacks. We'll see. Georgia Tech can throw a bunch of different things in that team, but Duke is playing really hard for Manny Diaz. 4-0, good for them. 4-0, 5-0, or
Let me
4-0,
check.
4-0.
I think it's 4.
I think it's 4 as well.
Oh, no,
But
5-0.
yeah, they're 5-0. Okay,
Yeah.
good on them. They're gonna make a bowl. That's good for. Oh, I'm gonna speak it out of existence actually. So I'll
Well, they play
be
Florida
careful
State, so
there.
they
But
make a bowl.
oh, they play Florida State. Oh, do they play Florida State
Yeah,
at
on the
home?
18th.
Oh my gosh, is Florida State going to lose for the very first time to Duke? We'll cover that later, but that's just a nice little teaser for that week. But that is a legitimate, red alert. This is a problem. Uh, anyway, my final play, UCF, a 3-point favorite at the Swamp at night. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. Not when you're just out muscled by Colorado. Give me the Gators to cover the spread. They end up winning the game, I think, and I don't know what the chant is. We're big three, something like that for UF to make sure that UCF is still down. Yeah. Oh yeah. I guess that's probably the one that they would do. But yeah, I think that UCF has to live with the little brother tag at least one more year.
Even though they beat them in the bowl game 2 years ago, right?
They did. Yes, that is true. The Gasparilla Bowl. Uh, But yeah, so they had their moment in the sun. I'm sorry, I did say that was my last one. I have one more, which I already previewed. Miami minus 10.5 on the road at Cal. All signs point to this being the soft factors say they should be on upset alert. If you can't block Florida State, you're not blocking Miami. So I don't think Cal can score any points, and I think Miami all they do is score points. So I really think that this Miami team is turning into something different. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next year, just as you roll it forward. I don't think they're really a legitimate national championship contender. I think they still have some holes and some things. I mean, they showed some weaknesses against the run against Virginia Tech, particularly against the dual threat QB, where you have to account for him in the run game.
And they also
I think
faced
there's
a pass rush that they hadn't done all year. I mean, it's the first team that could rush the ball at all. Pass rush, sorry.
yeah. So I think that there's some vulnerabilities, but I don't think they really get exposed until the ACC championship game. The schedule is so soft for Miami. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Especially when you think one of their toughest games going into the season was okay, it's probably Florida State or Louisville, and they played those games back to back. Now it's okay, you can really just focus on Louisville, put all your effort there, and Florida State you could probably sleep walk through that game and still win it by about 17, and they'll probably win it by a boatload. Preview on this, I'm taking Miami to cover whatever that spread is. I think I just said it at
that score.
Yeah, I think it's 35.5, and I'd still be no, Miami's covering that. He's going to bury that team if he can, and they will. Anyway, those are my picks for the week. I'm excited to get it out. Did you have anything else for the
Nope.
cover? We're a little bit deeper into this one than we have been the last little bit. So thanks if you made it this deep into the podcast. We appreciate it. We will see you all after this week for our week 6 reaction and week 7 preview. Thanks for tuning in. It's been CFB Paint. See ya.